Okay, you freaks, we're going to do a little podcast here. Okay, it's going to be on ecology, and so we're going to go through and we're going to explain the basic steps of the food chain, their pieces, and how they tie into the food web. Alright, it's going to be very simple. Hopefully we can help you wrap your brain around it. Alright? Now, I've got a little food chain drawn here on the board. Also, you may or may not see a picture flash that shows the same food chain. Okay, now what we need to realize here with this food chain is it's all dealing with energy. Where does the energy start? Where does it end? Okay, and how much is available? So when we look here, okay, I've got the sun drawn. You may or may not be able to see that. Okay, this is where the energy for a food web starts. Okay, from the sun. Now, the energy from the sun, you and I cannot use the energy directly from the sun, but we don't have to. We don't have to go out and absorb the sun into our skin and use that for energy or for food. Okay? Special plants called producers. Okay, there's some of your vocabulary word. We call these producers because they produce their own food from the sun via photosynthesis. Okay? And so they use the energy from the sun, and so we call them autotrophic. Autotrophic. Auto means self. Troph means nutrient. So they provide themselves nutrients using an alternate energy source, which is the sun. So we're thankful for the producers because we can't use the energy from the sun, but they can. They basically have like little solar panels that can use that energy, and they can store that energy. So what happens is this deer that I drew so beautifully can come along and it can eat the grass. And this grass has energy stored because it transformed the energy from the sun into sugar. Okay? So the deer here we call a consumer. Okay? It's a consumer. Now, the consumer in this case is a plant eater. That's the only thing this deer or elk can eat are plants. Okay? So plant, the Latin word, comes from the word root herb. We all know that word. We've heard the word herb before. Herb, so we call them an herbivore. Herbivore. A plant eater. That's what they do. They're a first or a primary consumer. Okay? Primary meaning first. First or primary consumer. Okay? Now, we also call them an herbivore. They eat the grass that has stored energy. Okay? But they're not autotrophic. They're not self-nutrient. They are other. Okay? So we call them a heterotroph. Hetero, the word root, means other. We hear this word root with other types of words, and that's all it means, is other or different. Okay? Other, different. So they get their nutrient from a different source. They have to go and find their food. Okay, now, my really cool looking tiger cat monster, whatever it is up here with stripes, it goes back and eats the deer. Okay? So, we have a couple of names for this. So, from here we've seen the energy start with the sun, be used by the grass, transformed into energy in the form of sugars, basically, that can be eaten by the deer and used, so this deer gets its nutrients from those sugars, and then it's eaten by the wolf cat monster that can actually consume the meat here and get the energy it needs from this animal. Okay, so we call this, right? We call this a carnivore. Carni, the word root, comes from basically the Latin again, it means meat. Okay, so it's a meat eater. It's a carnivore. Now, it gets its nutrients from a different source also. And so it is also a heterotroph. Okay? It's also a heterotroph. But in this case, it's not a primary consumer. Okay? It's not primary, it's secondary. So this wolf cat monster is a secondary consumer. It eats, in this case, second in the food chain. The deer eats first in the food chain. This eats second in the food chain. Okay? Now, we could also add a mushroom here. Okay? The mushroom has its little slits here, and we'll put some little dots on the mushroom. All right? The mushroom is a decomposer, and so the energy that's left over after this one eats, or this one, after the wolf kills it, right? Some of this can be left over. The decomposer breaks it down and can return some of those nutrients back to the earth to be used by the producer. Okay? But mostly nutrients, and it's not nearly as much energy as comes from the sun. So it's a cyclic, it's a circular cycle. Okay? But we need to watch energy flow. How does the energy flow through this ecosystem? From the sun gives us the energy we need to start with. The plants, the trees, they can capture that energy, autotrophic, so they can make their own food in form of sugar. Okay? Store that sugar so that other animals, the heterotroph, the primary consumer, the herbivore, can come along and eat those plants. Okay? So really, it's getting the energy started from the sun. It's just captured, stored here, so this animal can use it. And then it stores energy in its muscles and tissues and stuff. Okay? So the secondary consumer can get energy from it. So it's a flow of energy from the sun to our first level, to our second level, to our third level. Okay? So those are the dynamics of a simple food chain. You start with the sun, you end with a top consumer, and everything is linked by the decomposers that break it down back into nutrients that can be used once again by the plant down here at the bottom. Okay? So those are basically the dynamics of a simple food chain. And so our next video will be on food webs and the dynamic of a food web, because there's a little different. It has more organisms in the food web. Okay? So basically that's that. If you have any more questions about the food chain, you can see all this stuff online, or you can ask me. Peace out.